The Mario series used to be a bit different compared to the modern releases like Super Mario Odyssey, because back in the day it was all 2D, and even nowadays Nintendo uses it. So there's one important thing that we have to find out. Out of all the 2D bosses seen in the series, which ones are the worst? Number 10. Now, the Koopalings are a classic boss in the series and first appeared in Super Mario Bros. 3, where they are the main bosses of the first 7 worlds of the game. Here, the Koopalings were ordered by Bowser to use their airships and armies to conquer the various lands of the Mushroom World. Each Koopaling, after attacking a kingdom, stole the ruler's magic wand, and this is their main weapon now. Now, the fights that I'm specifically talking about are the ones seen in Super Mario Bros. 3, because they are really basic. I have complained about this before, multiple times even, but the fights seen in this game are just too similar to each other. Besides that, the moves they perform are linear and quite predictable. For how important these characters are and became, it's just not enough. Just shooting a magic ball every now and then and jumping and spinning around in their shells is as simple as you can get. Personally, I expected more, just like the fight scene in Super Mario World. Number 9. Now, in the history of the series, there were some weird games that were borderline spin-off titles. For example, Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. While the name Super Mario is in it, Mario plays almost no role. They only put the name in the game to help drive sales. However, in this game, there were also a number of weird bosses that were never really seen in other titles. And one of them is just too easy to defeat and also extremely basic. Bert The Bashful, the first mid-boss scene. It used to be normal, but Kamek made it a lot bigger. And in order to defeat him, you must hit him with eggs 6 times. And you would think that such a huge and powerful looking being filled to the brim with magic power would be a challenge, right? Something that tries to use different tactics. Well, no. He only jumps around like they normally would, and besides that, not a whole lot happens. It's extremely anticlimactic, so that makes it a bit boring really, and extremely easy, which I dislike a lot. They could have done more with him, but in the end, it just has more health. Number 8. Now, at some point, the 2D format was brought back with the new Super Mario series, and in the first games, there were a lot of new bosses. One of these was Cheap Skipper, a large purple and white Cheep Cheep with yellow fins and 2 sharp fangs protruding from its bottom lip. It was only seen in this game and was quite different from anything else. During the fight, he jumps out of the water on the right side of the screen, bounces along the bridge and exits from the left. As expected, you need to stomp it in order to win. Quite basic so far, which is fine. It's still quite different from any other fight in the game. The problem is the fact that he just jumps to your feet and gets hit, or that it just becomes really easy to get him afterwards. Overall, he just tends to hurt himself more than Mario, and within a short amount of time, he is defeated. After a couple of minutes, you forget about him, and that's the end of it. There's just not a whole lot good about him. However, before we continue, I will have to ask you something, because I'm on to you. You aren't subscribed yet, and if you are, then did you hit the bell? Well, if not, be sure to do so, cause it would help me out a ton. You love Mario games, I make Mario videos, that's a win-win in my opinion. So I will make more content, and you will subscribe and like. Deal? Cool. Now let's continue. Number 7. Now, like I said before, the Koopalings in their first game were a bit basic. And this also goes for Boom Boom to an extent. However, in New Super Mario Bros. U, where multiple Boom Booms are present on the overworld, he can be extremely boring as well. This time they return with spiked shells as they had in Super Mario Bros. 3, and here and there they try something new. But overall, it's such a similar experience to his first appearance, which is a shame in my opinion. There's so much Nintendo could have done with him on a more regular basis, but they just didn't. For example, the fact that they give him wings at some point is genius, but in the end, it's not seen a lot. So while the ideas and potential are there, they decide to use it rarely, and just give him the same old abilities as he had in his very first game. Number 6. Goombas have to be the most basic enemy in the entire series. There's nothing new or special about them. They're seen in all sizes and usually do nothing really. A bit of walking around at best. However, in New Super Mario Bros, they decided to make a boss out of one of them, and it's not that good. Before the battle, a seemingly regular Goomba transforms into a Mega Goomba. When it grows, it makes a similar sound to touching a Mega Mushroom, only somewhat more menacing. To defeat it, Mario can activate a switch, causing 2 platforms to appear. Using this, you can stomp him. So really, it sounds cool, but in the end, you're just fighting a bigger one with more health. A bit like the big Goomba seen in Super Mario Bros. 3. This makes the boss a bit lame in my opinion, and his moveset is also non-existent. Overall, not a very good or fun one. Number 5. Now the Koopalings made their 3D rendered debut in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, so of course Larry was seen in it and was the boss of World 1. In the first battle, Larry fires blue fireballs at Mario and jumps. After being hit, he retreats into his shell and starts to spin around the area, causing Mario damage if he comes into contact with him. After 3 stomps on the head, he is defeated. This is exactly the same as his battle in Super Mario Bros. 3, and as you all know by now, I'm not a huge fan of it. Especially in this time period, it's not an acceptable fight. It's just way too basic, and they could have easily improved it. Now his second battle is in a room filled with platforms that shift up and down thanks to Kamek's magic. And besides that, he uses the same moves. You would think the fight would become harder because of this, but sadly enough it doesn't really. In some ways it even became easier when he slides around because he can get stuck between 2 pillars. So even the second round is quite easy and boring. A real shame. Number 4. Now there are more Koopalings than just Larry, and sadly enough there's another one with a disappointing boss fight. Morton Koopa Junior from New Super Mario Bros. 2. Here his strategy is so basic that you can easily exploit it every time. He will create spiked balls using his wand during the battle and uses ground pounds to stun all players that are on the floor. Unlike the other Koopalings, because of the nature of his boss fight with Mario, he doesn't spend a limited amount of time in his shell upon being stomped, as he requires a pipe to return to his position. This is where the root of the problem is. As soon as he goes in his shell once, you know exactly where he will reappear. This gives you the option to just wait, hit, dodge him by walking in a circle, and then wait again, to do the whole cycle for a second, and eventually third time. The entire concept of the boss fight just doesn't work because of this, and it all makes me wonder if they even playtest their games at all. It's such an easy to perform and think of solution that it could have been found and patched out easily. But in the end, it wasn't changed, and within seconds you can find out how to position yourself in order to take him out in less than 30 seconds. Number 3. In a ton of videos, I praised the boss fight scene in Super Mario World. They're extremely creative and quite different from each other. However, there's one fight that's seen multiple times in the game, which is so simple that it seems like a last-minute idea. The Reznors. These dinosaur-like beings spit fireballs at the players and just stand on a platform and rarely move around. That's it. To defeat them, you must hit their platforms from below or shoot fireballs. So, pretty straightforward. You have a limited amount of time available to knock off the first Reznor, and then jump to one of their platforms as the floor begins breaking away, exposing the molten lava below at the start of the battle. Sadly enough, all of this is incredibly easy because the platforms take their sweet time to disappear one by one. So you can basically do this fight in about 15 seconds, just go over there, stand under the platforms, and jump. It's not that hard to pull off, and it makes the fight very simple and boring. Literally nothing happens. And that is a real bummer. Number 2. Now, as some of you might know, Super Mario Land 2's 6 Golden Coins is my favorite 2D Mario platformer of all time. It's such a fun and diverse game that you can easily pick up and play for a bit. However, there's one boss in it that I kind of hate. the 3 little pig heads, which are the bosses of the Mario zone. There are 3 of them and each has a different house and a special attack. Number 1 has a straw house and attacks by rolling back and forth along the screen. The second in the wooden house tries to pounce on Mario by jumping around. And the last one from a brick house attacks by jumping too, but leaps a bit higher every time. Each of them can be defeated by jumping on them 3 times or hitting them with 6 fireballs. Now the reason why it's on the list isn't related to how fun it is, because the fight itself isn't bad at all, and quite creative even. The reason why they annoy me is difficulty. They can be such a pain to take out, especially if you don't have the bunny power-up. The jumping and rolling each one of them does is always quite different, which can throw you off. Besides that, you have to beat 3 of them. This becomes a bit of a challenge sometimes. It's a great fight, but can also annoy me a ton. Number 1. Now we aren't changing game, because there's one boss in Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins that's a bit disappointing. The Sewer Rat, which is the boss of the macro zone in the game, and it's quite linear in my opinion, and not that hard. His fight is similar to the battle with Morton Koopa Junior and Roy Koopa during the events of Super Mario World. It will run up walls and into pipes and will eventually crawl to the top of the ceiling and fall straight onto Mario. So the fight itself is already a bit unoriginal and besides that, extremely simplistic. Out of all the bosses in this game, this one is my least favorite. Its design isn't that cool, the attacks are predictable, and last but not least, it has been done before. All of this combined makes it one of my least favorite bosses in the series, and especially compared to the others seen in this game. So now you know what rock bottom is, according to me. Thanks for watching everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to watch more, be sure to click the annotations on the screen right now, and if you haven't done so yet, like this video and subscribe. Also, don't forget about the bell button.